Are you a film fan who loves the ultimate home video experience? Look no further than The Disconnected. Your host, Ryan Verrill, is your go-to source for the latest and most accurate information on home video releases, exclusive interviews with industry insiders and filmmakers, and has established a thriving community where every film and physical media enthusiast feels welcome. From hidden gems to blockbuster hits, The Disconnected brings you insider knowledge and a welcoming space to share your love of cinema. Watch every Thursday night at 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific for the live announcements show and follow The Disconnected on social media to stay updated. Subscribe to The Disconnected on YouTube or on the podcast provider of your choice and dive into a world where every movie night is an adventure.
Thanks for tuning in to another show in the Next Reel family of film podcasts.
Want to skip those ads and get early access?
Become a member at truestory.fm/join and discover all the other great perks that come with it.
I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to the Next Reel when the movie ends.
Our conversation begins.
The big parade is over. I'll meet you in Berlin.
Is that how you think Bull sounded?
Yeah, pretty much. That's all of them do. All of them sound exactly the same. It's just the same voice talking to each other.
You kind of do that New England accent for all of them?
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. The Big Parade. You had seen this movie, right?
I had not. This is the only one from our list that I had not seen, yeah.
Because of the way we record these, I knew that there was one you hadn't seen, but I don't know which one it is until we are on it. So you hadn't seen this movie, as I said confidently. So now we're talking about The Big Parade. You hadn't seen it. I hadn't seen it. I understand what a big parade is now in military parlance. There are two in this movie. They tell you got to go out. They don't tell you got to come back in. Finest hours. You're welcome. And now we get to talk about an hour and a half of the most insufferably boring silent film that leads to a very exciting, oh my God, last hour of another silent film. Then they smash them together. That's what I thought of this movie.
I see. Okay. I can see we're coming in hot with opinions on this film.
Yes.
You know, and I can understand that. I didn't feel that way. I actually thought there was a very interesting setup in this film that we do spend getting to know these characters and really getting a sense of, in some sense, kind of the tedium that can be war when you're not out in the field, like on the front lines or anything like that. And so here we end up following our troops as they train, and then they go to France, and they are set in a village. And then they have to wait, and they just wait and wait and wait. And so they get to know the town and the women, and our hero falls in love, and all of that is kind of the first part of our story as we're kind of getting a sense as to what life is like with these sorts of characters. For me, that getting to know you part, and I suppose, like, with some of the stories like this, you're putting yourself into a mindset of, like, watching a 1925 film, a 100-year-old film. It really helps you get to understand who these characters are, their connections and everything. So once they actually are given the call to go fight on the front lines in the trenches as they fight the Germans, you really get a sense for how painful it is to suddenly start suffering these losses and dealing with these issues. And so for me, that worked, but I can absolutely see why, especially when we're watching a film that is made this way, that it can end up playing more roughly.
Yeah, it's just, I like the intention, and I feel like that is very much part of the story, but it is a lot of it. It's just a lot of it, and I didn't need quite so much of it. I do think it's fun to watch the way the family dynamic is portrayed before he even goes to war. The fact that he's sort of shamed into going to war because the girl at home says that she'll be more proud of him than ever once he signs up to go to war. And he's like,
once he shows up in that outfit, that
yeah,
uniform.
right. Once he enlists. And so he enlists, never thinking that he was going to enlist. He's from clearly a privileged family. His dad hates him because he's a layabout. And so
and his mom is terrified of him actually signing up.
Yes, terrified because they kiss too fondly on the mouth too often. Let me just tell you, no one kisses their mother that way. And that comes full circle at the end when she's cradling his head romantically. But I feel like it's just interesting to watch those relationships. And that part I loved. It was the stuff in France that became an exercise in comedy. And part of that is because of, 2025 eyes watching a 1925 movie. Everything is a little bit funnier. I don't know that it was intentionally funny. Maybe it was, but it took me out of the film, a lot of the French homestead stuff. And I felt like that was a bit, you could have cut a solid 30 minutes from that sequence and had a really tight 120 that gives me the whole story, and I would have been happy. So I'm not saying that you're absolutely not wrong. I do find it sometimes challenging to put myself in the head of a 1925 viewer, but also I'm not a 1925 viewer, and this movie felt belabored.
It's interesting. I think one of the things that actually weirdly helped me engage with this film is just by happenstance, I watched the day before an Italian film from 1959 about Italians during World War I fighting the Austrians. It was a similar tone in that, like, there was a lot of levity in it. Now, it was more balanced throughout of levity and the horrors of war, and the levity and the horrors of war, kind of like throughout. And honestly, I think that probably played for me a little better, kind of that way of having more of that balance throughout. And I think the Italians really find a great way to balance comedy and horror like that. Anyway, it worked really well, but it immediately put me into this mindset of jumping into another World War I film and watching a film where I spend so much time with these characters and there's a lot of levity, which ends up balancing with the horror. And so it really kind of put me in a mind space to be ready for this. And I thought that was actually interesting. And thinking about like the scope of, like, this film was made in 1925 and we're just past World War I for all of these people involved in the story. Like, it's very fresh in their minds. It's like watching Apocalypse Now in the 80s, right? You're just fresh from having lived through Vietnam, and now here you are watching a film kind of looking back and exploring what actually was going on there. So all of these people knew people who, like, the people acting, the people watching, had probably known people who had served. And the author of the original story, Lawrence Stallings, had fought in World War I. He'd been there and wanted to tell this story about these people and like what life was like. When they made the film, they brought in military divisions to help with the production. And these are people who had actually fought in the war, and they were reenacting battles that they had fought. And so it brought authenticity to the battle scenes and everything. And as they were filming, King Vidor and his team would get stories from these privates and everything. And these stories ended up really becoming a big part of why they told the film that way. And I actually found a program of when this film came out in 1925. And like, there's a whole interview with King Vidor in this. And I just want to read one part because there's one character who I was like, this guy is nothing but a caricature. And it's Slim, played by Carl Dane, who's always chewing tobacco. Like, his lips are stained with the tobacco juice.
Yeah.
It's really, really revolting. And this is the quote that he has about Slim. The extraordinary looks of Carl Dane in the role of Slim suggested to vets many incidents of actual front happenings. As soon as a Legionnaire saw Carl, he would laugh till the tears ran down his cheeks and recall some tale of a real leatherneck who looked and acted just like that. Slim is certainly a type. We built up his funny role out of the stories these vets told us. So while we're watching this again through eyes that are 100 years after the fact, the people at the time recognized everybody in this. Like, they saw friends, family, people that they knew in all of this. And so it really felt incredibly authentic. And so I think I appreciate all of that work that they went into telling these stories and making it feel real. Again, yes. Could they have probably shortened it? I think they probably could have. I would not want to lose the conversation about the frog, for sure. One of the funniest things in the entire film. But largely, I found it to be just an interesting window for me to look through to see what life was like in 1925, what looking back on this fresh war was like.
Yeah, and I don't want to completely dismiss the experience on the farmstead for exactly that reason. I mean, the part of what makes the inclusion of that part of the story important to the whole story is that it documents the massive, terribly prepared army that we sent to France, right, during a really pivotal part of the war. And the entire buildup is a dopamine response of patriotism that allowed, almost 3 million people to be drafted under selective service, and all of them, I don't want to say all of them, but a lot of them very enthusiastic, as propagandized in this movie. And they need that part of the movie before the real stuff begins of war to pretend, to sort of cosplay as soldiers, right? Where all they're doing is walking around and, sort of parading through the countryside without having anything really serious happen. You need that as part of the story, because that's part of growing up as a soldier in these stories. And I totally get that. And it's interesting, the piece that I don't need is so much of the flirtatious romance stuff, which I understand is also very big part of the story of U.S. military going abroad and having relationships and having, getting married and having children, and sometimes having children and not getting married and then coming home, and it's very, very serious. So all of that I understand, and I think is fascinating the way this movie, says, and I really want to highlight what you were saying here. Like, the U.S. entered the war in 1917, right? And this movie came out in 1925. The proximity to actual fighting, we must highlight again and again and again. Like, these kids were largely still kids when the movie was being made about their experience there. That is crazy to me. That's crazy.
Yeah, really, it gives them a glimpse into reality. And it's so different now. Like, we really don't have a way to get a full perspective of how people in 1925 were glimpsing what was going on 10 years before, during the war. I mean, yes, they, as newspapers, would make it to them eventually, photos from Europe would get over to the US and then finally make it into the papers. It took weeks, if not months, for information to get passed around and everything. And it was a much slower system of information spreading and dispersal than we have today. Like, today, it's instantaneous. We find out immediately when something on the other side of the world has just happened. And back then, it was a very slow process. And it was all just images. It was photos that they could see. This was the first real chance that they had to get a sense as to what it was actually like to be there, to be living through all of this stuff, both the leisurely days of waiting for things to happen and the awful stuff that was happening in the trenches. And so, yeah, I think that's a really important perspective to just think about with this, of just how how valuable this was as a resource for people to just even understand what was happening over there, you know?
Well, the fact that he comes back an amputee, and having seen a lot of war movies, that part was shocking to me because we'd only seen him in a cast up to his thigh.
Yeah, right.
And I mean, as far as I can tell, he largely marched and hitchhiked across the countryside in pajamas and a robe, and is cast with and in order to see his lady, but she was already gone. And then the next time we see him, he's in a car with his dad, and they start with a close-up on his face, and they're having a conversation. And then he gets out of the car, and we see that he's an amputee the first time his mother sees him. And that moment was really impactful for me. I mean, I thought that was an important thing that the movie had held secret from me. I didn't see it coming, and it dropped at the most important moment when you see the impact of war on the family, on the family's reaction to what their resource, their child, had endured on their behalf, on behalf of the country. All of that was really felt progressive to me for this time.
Yeah, and valuable, especially when you look at something like this and The Best Years of Our Lives, like films that really show you the realities of war and these amputees coming home from battle and just the lives that they now are going to have to figure out for themselves in their new reality. And so I think it's important to show these. And I just got to say, the binding work on John Gilbert's leg was astonishingly good. Like, I was
astonishing.
Like, how tight did they have to tie his leg up for him to? I mean, it doesn't look like you see it from the side. He's moving around. I'm like, what is this guy, like double jointed? What happened?
That poor guy's knee joint is excruciating. Excruciating. I'm sure he never walked the same again after these scenes.
It's like, wow, that was because I was like, okay, surely they cut to somebody else who is an amputee. I'm like, no, that's still, we're seeing John Gilbert's face. Like, how, like that was impressive work.
It wasn't luckily it wasn't long, like the scenes that he was
right,
but that's still I mean the time it takes to bind and then put the pants on and then get ready to shoot and then take it all. Oh my God, man. Oh my God.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about, so you mentioned the family, and I think that's important because we certainly get a sense of John Gilbert's character, Jim, as this very idle rich boy, right? We meet him when he's getting shaved by their, I don't know, presumably not slave, we'll just say their house servant, and is getting a shave. And so we get a sense of him and his life. And this is a person who, as you said, is probably not going to sign up for war. It's only because his girlfriend, even she doesn't completely convince him. It's really his friends that he runs into who are like, hey, everybody's doing it. And so that kind of gets him. The parade's marching by and his feet are tapping and he's like, okay, fine, I'm going to go do it. And he signs up. But we also meet other people and we get a sense of the people in town, and not necessarily just this idle rich boy, but we get a sense of Bull, this guy who's managing a bar, and we get a sense of Slim, who's just running like a jackhammer, working on framing for a building. And so we're getting a sense of people of different classes, and they all end up in the troupe together and end up befriending each other, these three people, Bull, Slim, and Slim is the one who's always chewing tobacco disgustingly, and Jim. And that becomes kind of our core trio. And so I think the family bit is very important, but I also want to talk about kind of like the bonding and the friendships that become kind of a key part of the military story. And here it is between Jim, Bull, and Slim. How does that story, kind of like the growth of that friendship and how it's portrayed over the course of the film, play for you?
Back up for a second and let me ask you a question, because these faces came by pretty quickly. There's a part where there's the first big parade, but it's just a parade. It's not a big parade. It's the parade of all the people who are enlisting going down the main street.
The town was ready for that enlistment notice, because as soon as that was in the paper, they have a parade going down the street.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, they're ready.
Yeah, there's like business guys, teachers, and like everybody's just like, I'm done.
Yeah.
And a car goes by in the parade. Jim pulls his car up to an intersection and just stops. Right,
the parade blocks his path.
The parade blocks his path, and he stops and he stands up and he's tapping his feet to the marching band, and the car goes by. The guys in that car were any of those guys Slim and Bull?
No,
he didn't meet them until.
Right. Right. He met them because they're not his class. Yeah. Those were the other like rich guys, the rich kids from town that are all signing up. And so they convince him to go.
Yes. Because then we never see them again. We're all doing it. Yeah. We never see them again. We also, I don't think, ever really see Jim's car again, which as far as we know, he just left at the intersection because he goes and gets in their car with them.
I was laughing about that because
that was pretty good.
He doesn't even pull it into a spot. He just leaves it in the intersection and runs off to join the army.
The lesser people will take care of it.
That's right. That's right.
Right. So that was okay. So yeah, we need a trio, right? And I think we have this trio that actually works perfectly because, we get to see how each of the different classes respond to struggle, right? We get to see how Slim does. We get to see how Jim does. We get to see how Bull does. We get conversations, or we get sort of conversations. We get stories of rank and what rank means before the war, when rank is just patches, when they're putting patches on and taking them off for tiny infractions and misunderstandings, versus when it really matters, when they're in, stalemate trench warfare and witnessing massive, massive casualties of friends all around them. I think it's really, it's important, like you say, in these movies for that to be critical to the narrative. And I think this movie shows it off.
Well, and in the scope of war films, I don't know if this was, I'm assuming this was one of the earliest World War I films. There may have been some other ones, but certainly one of the biggest at the time. And certainly one of the more prominent war pictures that had been made at the time. And I think it has become such just an expected part of what we see in war films, of the camaraderie that you build with your fellow soldiers in a war story. And so it's just like a part of it, that it's like, that's just how they play now. And so it's over 100 years of watching war films. Like, this is such a critical part of what to expect in them, right? Of like finding those people you're going to get along with, maybe some people you're not going to get along with, but you're all end up working for the same side. And once you're out in the field, you're all there together to serve one purpose. And I think they play that really well. And I like watching this story of these three, how initially after Melisande is introduced, all three of them are pursuing her, and you've got kind of a little bit of a disgusting scene as the three of them are all vying for her attentions and keep grabbing her and touching her and stuff. I'm like, yeah, okay, 100 years ago, that's one of those things that you just have to really kind of like, doesn't play as well today.
Yeah, but didn't care for it.
But I do like the way that we're following these characters, and just like the camaraderie and just the back and forth of things. Like I loved the little flipping or pulling a thing out of the hat to say who's gonna go get the barrel so that we can make ourselves a shower. Slim writes a thing on pieces of paper and puts them in a hat. Jim pulls it out, says, I got it. And so he's like, okay, I have to go get it, and doesn't realize that Slim and Bull have already kind of like done this before, and all three of the pieces of paper all say, I got it, but neither of them reveal that to Jim. Like, it played really well. Like, I loved those moments as we have this. And it all built to a really strong end when, as you said, as it came to rank, where Slim is like, I'm the ranking officer here between the three of them. They're all stuck in a shell hole out in the field in the middle of the night, and they've been ordered to try killing this machine gunner who's pinning everybody down. And Slim, they kind of do another little contest, but it's chewing tobacco spitting contest. And of course, everybody knows Slim is going to win because he's really good. And he's just like, hey, I'm the commanding officer. I get to do what I think works best. And so he does that purposefully so that he goes out there and ends up getting killed as he's tried to do this. And so,
which was incredible, by the way. The long march to death of Slim after he's shot for the first time. Right? He just like keeps coming back until they do the helmet shot and the blood coming down his face.
Right. They really
gruesome.
Yeah. It was tough. I mean, and I think that's what is important about these moments of getting to know these characters. As disgusting as Slim is, you do kind of grow a sense of fondness for him, so that once he's out there in the field dying, it's rough. And then you can see why Jim is so taken to anger when he comes across Slim and then just storms ahead and kills everybody. So it's tough.
He has that rant, right? Who's fighting this war? Are orders fighting the war, or men, right? That where he sort of comes undone was really really impactful. What a great moment. I think the last hour of this movie is some of the best just sort of war movie that I've seen. Like it's incredible.
It really is powerful. The gassing and everything else that goes on, and his rant. And I think it plays so well. It's the one part that it's trickier in a silent film, but as we find out, Slim is laying out there in the field just moaning, and they are just left hearing him moan as he's slowly dying. And that's what kind of like drives Jim crazy. Jim and Bull are just like, but Jim especially is just like, I have to do something. And he breaks, and that's when he has to go out there. He and Bull finally go out there. And then Bull also ends up getting killed. Or not, he doesn't get killed, but he gets badly wounded. Or does he get killed? No, he gets killed.
I think he gets killed because for a while I thought at the end, near the end, Jim is in the hospital and he wakes up and he's in gray flannel pajamas that I think have flowers on them. And I made a note of that.
Maybe not flowers, but yeah.
And it keeps cutting back to a guy who was clearly shell-shocked, clearly dealing with some trauma, and he's roped, he's tied into his bed, and he keeps trying to get out and screaming. That was hard to watch, and I couldn't tell if that was Bull. I don't think it was.
I don't think that was Bull. I actually thought the other guy was Bull that he looked across the way to and saw another guy who was missing an arm. And I was like, is that Bull? Yeah, so I think, but I don't know. I think that we both probably, the fact that Bull is laying there and is like, I'll see you in Berlin, it's like, okay, that was a clear sign that he's going to die. That's kind of just the tragic end of Bull, but.
Right. Calling his shot.
It was rough. And it plays, like all of that really plays.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now let's talk about the loves in Jim's life, because that's the other big part of this story. Initially, it is Justine. Did you?
I think it's Justine.
Justyn. I thought it was Justine. Yeah.
I called her Justin for the duration of the movie, and then Kira saw the title and said, "Oh, so that's a funny way to spell Justine." And I said, "Yes, it is. Funny way to spell Justine."
I saw that too, and I was like, Justin doesn't sound right. No. It is probably Justine, but it's very interesting spelling.
Yeah.
This is a story of a man who has a love at home, Justine, who is, again, as we said, kind of is the one who pushed him into doing this, or one of the many that nudged him into doing this. He's engaged to her. I want to get a sense of this. Did we have a sense of how much in love with her he was?
Right. That was my central question, right? That it felt like she was the boss of him, and he did things for her, not because he was in love, like necessarily in love with her. Maybe he thought he was in love with her, and they had this weird dynamic about, I don't know. It just felt like she felt like a very domineering person in his life, and their relationship was not authentic, because the moment he goes to France and meets the farm girl, my first reaction was, thank God, let's move on from Justine. Right.
Interesting.
So yeah, I was not in it for Justine and Jim. They needed to move on from each other.
Well, she's not a good cook. She makes it. Well, I couldn't decide. Is the cake, did she make it just a terrible cake, or was the joke that it had gotten stale because it took so long to get here?
Yeah. Either way, they ate it, and that I think was statement in and of itself.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That they split it, broke it over his knee.
Yeah,
What a good
right.
joke.
That was really funny.
Yeah.
I struggled with Justine also. And so, but it was one of those things where I'm like, I don't feel like it quite set enough up for me that Jim was like wavering, like it seemed like he was kind of fine because he's this idle guy. I just wanted a sense that it was just kind of a relationship of convenience or something, which may be more of a modern way to kind of include that. As it was, I think it plays okay, but then once he goes to France, like he's instantly has the hots for Melisande, this Renee Adore's character who lives in this little village. Easy to fall for her. She's very beautiful. But I was like, Jim, are you forgetting something? It's like,
and then he got the letter from Justine and the picture, and was clearly distraught because of his, new love for Melisande. That he had to reckon with that there on the farm. But the relationship joke comes full circle and yet is unresolved. And here is where we get the payoff. He comes home supposedly to see his bride-to-be, Justine. As he's driving down the road with his dad, Mom's at home, opens the door to their house and sees Justine kissing the accountant.
It's his brother.
Oh, that was his brother? I thought that was like the CPA.
His brother is like an accountant at the firm.
Okay.
Like he works for dad at the firm, but that's his brother.
I totally missed that. So she falls for his brother. Now, he gets home and everybody kind of hugs him, which is great, but it never comes out that she and his brother are together. And he lays down on his mom's lap and tells his mom, I found this French woman. And the mom, who now knows the entire story, says, oh, well, the only thing that matters is that you go to this French woman. Everything will be fine here. You need to go to the French woman. He never finds out that Justine has given him up for the brother.
Yeah.
Come on, Mom.
Yeah. There probably could have been a little cleaning up with that as far as like letting that revelation actually come out that this is what's going on. I did write in my notes, we've suddenly entered a soap opera here.
Yes.
Like soap opera territory with that whole thing. I was like, wow, okay, just a quick way to get Justine out of the way. Let's have her fall in love with Harry.
If you're going to give soap opera, I'm going to judge soap opera. And as a soap opera, this is incomplete. It is insufficient.
No, it's not. You're right. It's not all there. And so it was really funny. And I will say, like, there were more laughs at the end than there really should have been with that whole bit. And then we cut to France, and it was like Women of France is the intertitle. And we see Melisande and her mother working the fields, tilling a field with pulling a plow behind a cow. And then there's a long shot of the village in the distance and a hill, and we see the silhouette. And it's you don't want to laugh, but it's really funny because it's one-legged Jim and his crutches in silhouette. In a very long shot, he's a tiny little dot, just like working his way across the very, very tippy top of the hill.
It's like a Python shot. And he's hobbling. You know it's him because of his distinctive hobble.
Yeah, right. And it reminded me of like when kids go to a carnival and the little shooting thing with the little animal figures moving across the top that you're shooting. Like it was just like this little robotic little guy moving across the top of the hill. Again, I don't mean to laugh at this poor amputee working his way across the top of a hill, but it just played funny. It played funny in silhouette, and but it is the reuniting of Melisande and Jim, and so I did like that he does walk across France to find her. Yes,
walk across France to find her again.
Right.
Right. The other unintentionally funny bit is that she waits at that plow for a really long time. A really long time before she closes the distance. Like she makes him hobble really all the way down that stupid hill. before she's like, oh, I get it. Like, she's curious from the way back at the start of the field, and she just keeps plowing. I think that's really funny.
Well, but did you see what she had to go through? Like,
Yeah.
she's like, I'm not going to go until he's closer because I have to scramble down an entire like hill of like rocks and boulders just to get down to the road. It's like, where, like, this is what they go through just to go plow this field? Like, I have to get through this. I mean, I get it. It's post-war. The earth is torn up, but they picked like the worst and hardest place to actually go plow.
It was funny because like they never gave us any context. They showed us that she's in a field in a medium shot, and they show the hill at a shot from a great distance, but they never at any point show us what's between that, like that road.
Yeah.
Until she has to do some bouldering to get to it.
Like they may as well have thrown a river in that she also had to like swim across.
River and oh my God, what is this lava field? Sharks? Are there really sharks here?
Quite a bit of work. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. She has to fight a bear. Like, it's just a lot.
But okay, all of the joking aside though, I actually really did enjoy the relationship that developed between Melisande and Jim. And it was interesting, and it's even more interesting, I suppose, in a silent film because they don't speak each other's language, right? She's speaking French. We only get one intertitle that pops up of French as she's talking, and the rest is just him with his
problematic.
Not just him, but him, Jim, Bull, Slim. Anytime they're parlez-vous, like it's
Francais,
just like it's all written out phonetically, kind of on the intertitles, and it's very funny, I suppose. But yeah, you're getting the sense that these are people who, I mean, they've got their little dictionary, but you don't really get a sense that he's working to improve on his French or she's working to improve on his English. They just seem the entire time to just always be unable to actually effectively communicate.
Yeah, because it's the language of love, Andy.
It's the language of love.
Yeah,
that's right.
Unspoken.
But I do enjoy their love story, and I like the fact that she brings him into the house when everybody's over there. Like they say that there's this weekly or monthly, I can't remember how often, but this thing that they do where all the letters that have come in from the French families, they all meet in Melisandre's mother's house and they read the letters out loud so everyone can kind of find out what's going on with people that they know. And she brings Jim in to kind of be part of that. And everyone was kind of okay with it. Like I enjoyed these moments that felt like, okay, they're kind of working on building a real relationship here that doesn't just feel like, I don't know, you got a sense that a lot of the other soldiers, like as they were leaving, they each have like women on their arms and stuff. You kind of get a sense like some of these might be love, a lot of them might be just sex. You know, you just kind of get a mixed sense of what's actually going on.
But Andy, when he leaves her, that's enmeshment. Because they won't stop kissing until people are dragging them as a couple to the cart. And then when he finally gets up in the cart, she's hanging on him and being dragged through the mud.
She is hardcore.
And then she stands up and is waving to him, and he just starts taking off stuff and throwing it at her to the point where she has a necklace, like a locket, and a shoe. Holding a shoe to her chest. I mean, I know that's supposed to be romantic. I was dying. At that bit.
Yeah, it was pretty funny.
It felt like The Jerk. It felt like in a moment she's going to pick up a lamp and a phone book, and all I need is this lamp.
The fact that she grabbed onto the chain and was dragging behind the truck, that for me, I was like, wow, okay. We might have gone a little too far with this thing here. But you know, it allowed for moments. Like after everybody leaves, there's this beautiful shot of her as this last person standing in this wide shot of this empty road. Like there were some moments that made it actually play. And I felt the connection between the two of them. And I guess that's one of the things that I thought was important, is building a sense of this actual growing fondness and this love that these two have for each other.
Sure. It goes from playing a little bit hard to get flirtatious to I'm being dragged through the mud by your truck pretty quickly. Like that's a hard turn, but I get it. Like I definitely get it.
Yeah. it is pretty funny. But yeah, so that's kind of a sense of the story. And then so we get all of that. And then we talked about the war bit. Any other bits that you want to talk about that really stand out? Any moments of the war specifically, or the marching? A lot of big parade marching as they're going to and from the field.
There was a lot of marching. There are some sequences of impeccably used tint once we get to the actual war. I mean, the way they color night and some of the graphic fighting, a lot of soldiers marching by in a really dramatic fashion. But there is one sequence that I thought was kind of horrifying, just as an example of how we wage war, where the entire platoon, I don't know, battalion, whoever, whatever they call their ranks, are spread out marching into a wood. And in the woods are the opposing forces, and they're all camouflaged.
Snipers, yeah.
Snipers. And they're camouflaged poorly. In some cases, once you see one, you see them all. But the way that was shot, the way the snipers are just shooting our friendlies, I thought was captured in a truly horrifying way. The act that it just felt like we were doing nothing. We, the American forces, were doing nothing to prevent themselves from being shot. It felt like when you look at the Revolutionary War and the colonials who, we're going to fight from the trees. We saw the Patriot. We want to fight how Mel Brooks fought, while the British are fighting in their bright red coats in the middle of a field. You know what I mean? That's what it felt like a little bit to me. Like it was, we're gonna just make this a really obvious and difficult thing to watch as the Allies get mowed down. And ultimately, there weren't that many snipers, but it was a powerful sequence.
That was a fantastic sequence, because we're seeing it from the perspective of the side of the Germans looking forward at our troops. And often it's specifically Jim, Slim, and Bull and other people. And we're watching them just kind of on the slow march forward. And then as you're talking about, like, people behind them just drop. Like one guy drops. And then we cut to another shot and people are walking and it's just quiet. You just see people fall, getting hit. And it's really like haunting, like the way that plays. It really it hit me quite a bit too. And just, I loved the way that King Vidor chose to construct that. As you said, it was very impactful, and it worked in just really haunting ways of showing what that reality was like. We have to keep marching forward, knowing that people are getting shot and picked off, and we just have to keep our eyes open and hope we can spot these guys before other people get killed. And it's pretty rough.
Yeah, they did get one early on who was high in a tree, and then it was none for a long time, and just watched their people get shot.
Yeah, right. Where do you stand on King Vidor as far as directors? Have you seen much of his films?
Have we done a King Vidor film?
No.
This was the first.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
King Vidor worked, through the silence quite a bit, and then into the sound era. I've only seen a few of his films. I've seen Stella Dallas, which is a great film. I saw The Citadel. What is the other one that I saw of his? There's one more that I'm blanking on. But yeah, I like the stuff that he's done. I haven't seen a lot of it. The Champ is a big one that he directed that I just haven't seen yet. The Crowd, that was another one that I highly recommend checking out if people like Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans, which is one of the first films nominated, the first Oscars. The Crowd is another one that year, and it's very similar to Sunrise in many ways. It's a little bit of a darker film, but it's an excellent film. So that's probably my favorite of King Vidor's films.
So it's interesting that his IMDb top 4, The Wedding Night, War and Peace from 1956, Hallelujah, and Show People. I haven't seen any of those, but it seems like I should have seen the Audrey Hepburn War and Peace.
Yeah.
Put that on the list.
Yeah, but I know he's like a very prominent director and was big for. I think after this film, he became Actually, there was a financial deal. We'll talk about the money here in a little bit, but there was in his contract was a note that entitled him to 20% of the profits. I don't know, the way that this is written, it doesn't sound like he knew that this was in his contract. I'm not exactly sure, but the lawyers from the studio called a meeting. They said the picture cost even more, and they downgraded their estimates for how successful they thought the film would be, and they convinced him to sell his stake in the film instead of taking a percentage, just get extra cash. So they tricked him into basically saying, oh, the film's costing so much, it's probably not going to do well, just take a cash deal instead. And so he did. And then the movie went on to make insane amounts of money. And so while he didn't get that extra money, he ended up becoming one of MGM's top directors at the time.
Well, it was in the name all along, Andy.
King?
Who names their kid King?
Yeah, you got to be confident.
That's bold.
That is.
That's really bold. Yeah.
John Gilbert is our lead. I didn't mention this when we talked about when we were talking about Ben-Hur in our member bonus episode, but he is yet another of the faces at the chariot race in the stadium. So he's another person from the studio who's watching the chariots. So I thought that was funny.
That's funny. That's very funny.
Another actor who I don't think I've seen much of.
Another dandy. He's a very fine lad.
Yes, indeed.
You see that kid and you're like, send him to war. I believe that.
And sadly, Renée Adoré, well, what's interesting is she was actually from France, living in Belgium during the time of World War I, and would have been essentially one of these villagers had her family not gotten her out of there when World War I got started. And so she ended up getting moved out of the country. But yeah, so she was very much familiar with these people. She became very famous after this film, but a few years later ended up contracting tuberculosis and died at the age of 35. So a very sad end for her.
Tuberculosis, man. Oof.
Ay.
But yeah, I liked her very much. I think she's great. Hard not to imagine her as a dark witch. Because every time I hear Melisande, I hear Melisandre from Game of Thrones.
That's really funny.
That's where I go. So kept waiting for her to do something really bad.
Yeah, that is funny.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you didn't mention when you were talking about the tinting, but there was one moment where there was a hand-painted bit in the film, and it was after the battle in the fields, and he's left in the fields. And in that moment when he almost knifes the guy through the throat, the German guy, and then he sees the young kid that is in front of him, and he kind of has that moment where, what am I doing? Stops, and then the kid ends up dying anyway after he tries to give him a cigarette.
Yeah.
Very tough moment. But then after the battle, we see the next morning and the Red Cross truck comes up and it's got the red cross painted. I was like, oh, what a great use of actually hand painting again. I love seeing these in these old silent films.
And it's a Red Cross truck that gets stuck in the mud, but gets out. Right? It's actually a bit of an optimistic turn.
It is. Indeed. Yeah.
So
I think it's a really strong film. I totally appreciate that it's a film that feels of its time, and there are elements that definitely feel like it can drag a little bit. But for me, I found that it worked pretty well. So I had a great time with it, and I'm glad we had a chance to chat about it.
Me too, for sure.
All right. Well, we will be right back. But first, our credits.
The Next Reel is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson, music by Ian Post, Kashido, Dr. Paranoid, Oriel Novella, and Eli Catlin. Andy usually finds all the stats for the awards and numbers at the-numbers.com, boxofficemojo.com, imdb.com, and wikipedia.org. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show.
Attention movie lovers, cinephiles, and dreamers. The world of cinema needs you. the forces of mediocrity and unoriginality threaten to extinguish the light of true artistry in film. But there is hope. There is a place where the brave and passionate can gather to defend the honor of cinema. Letterboxd. Letterboxd is a rallying cry for those who believe in the power of movies. It's a community of warriors, ready to fight for the films that matter, to celebrate the films that have shaped our lives, and to discover new masterpieces. By joining Letterboxd, you are enlisting in the greatest cause of our time. And now, we are offering you a chance to join the ranks of the elite. Head over to thenextreel.com/letterboxd or sign up directly on Letterboxd and use the code NEXTREEL to receive a 20% discount on your membership. This code works for both new recruits and seasoned veterans. With a Letterboxd Pro or Patron membership, you'll be fully equipped to take on the enemies of art, with features like ad-free browsing, personalized stats, and streaming service notifications. So, brave movie lover, will you answer the call? Will you join us on the front lines of film, ready to defend the honor of cinema? Visit thenextreel.com/letterboxd or sign up on Letterboxd now with the code NEXTREEL and let the battle begin. The fate of film rests in your hands. Enlist now. The future of cinema depends on it.
Sequels and remakes, Andy. Has there ever been another World War I movie made since this one?
The next big parade. This, no sequels or remakes of The Big Parade, but certainly this set the stage for how people would want to approach World War I stories at the time. In fact, this film is listed as a very big influence on All Quiet on the Western Front, which would come out, I think, 5 years later. And so it's an important film in that sense. But yeah, it doesn't actually have any specific sequels or remakes.
Okay, but I know this is the part we've all been looking for. How did Photoplay magazine treat this movie?
I'm glad you brought up Photoplay magazine, Pete. Very important piece of history, of course. Photoplay magazine.
Certainly for this series.
For this particular series in the silent era, it is essentially our awards segment. Is how did it do with Photoplay magazine? Actually, this film ended up doing quite well with Photoplay magazine. It won Best Picture of the Month in January 1926. Best Actor of the Month, John Gilbert, or I think they could just call it Best Performances of the Month. John Gilbert won, and Carl Dane both won, all in the January 1926 issue of it. And what's perhaps more important and more telling, the Medal of Honor for Best Film of 1925 went to this film, The Big Parade, in Photoplay magazine. Some people say this is kind of a precursor to what people would say were the Oscars back in that period of time, is when they would actually win this Medal of Honor. And so it really was the only film award at the time. So people essentially view this as kind of the big award of the year. So yeah, in a way, it kind of won Best Picture of 1925.
Can you imagine if we did Oscars every month?
That might improve things. I don't know.
Were there any others of note?
Over at the San Sebastian International Film Festival in 1983, it had an honorable mention win with the OCIC Award, which is the International Catholic Organization for Cinema and Audiovisual. And then, of course, the National Film Preservation Board, it was placed in the National Film Registry in 1992 as a very important film in the history of cinema. So there you go.
All right. Once again, we have a segment to talk about, Andy. How did it do at the box office?
I gotta say, Pete, I love that Eddie Mannix.
Oh, man.
These films, MGM, I gotta love him and MGM because I actually do end up with data. The movie cost $382,000 or $6.9 million in today's dollars, which seems insanely low for what they accomplished in this film. Vidor's film opened either November 5th, 1925 or November 19th, 1925, 2 weeks later. This was one of the biggest hits of the entire decade, going on to earn $5 million domestically and $1.1 million internationally on its initial release. It was so popular it would go on to get re-released around the world throughout the 20s and 30s. And in the end, they estimated it went on to earn between 18 and 22 million. Now, I'm assuming that's not adjusted figures for all of its various releases, but as I don't have any breakdown, we're just going to assume it earned 22 million for our purposes, which is 398.2 million in today's dollars. That lands the film with an adjusted profit per finished minute of almost 2.6 million, earning back almost 58 times its budget. So, yeah, The Big Parade ended up being MGM's most profitable movie until Gone with the Wind, 14 years later. It's also sometimes proclaimed to be the most profitable film of the entire silent era, though people still argue about whether it's this or The Birth of the Nation actually taking that record. Since data is so weak, it's just one of those things we'll never really know. Regardless, this was a massive success.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy for a movie with such a boring first hour.
But again, remember, people at the time really felt like they were watching people that they knew. And so you can see why this film would play so well at the time.
Yeah, crazy. Well, I'm really glad to get it under my belt and get it in my catalog. Worth talking about for sure.
Yeah. I think it's definitely an interesting glimpse into World War One. That, I think it's a valuable, when you're trying to look at World War One like this, I think is a valuable glimpse into it to understand how people so close to that war, people who could have been in the war, were now making this film, telling this story. And so I think that's just a valuable thing to think about when you're looking at this. So I really liked it. I had a great time with it, and I'm glad to have who added this to the list of films that I have seen.
Me too.
All right. Well, that is it for today's conversation. Next week, we are looking at Rupert Julian's 1925 film, The Phantom of the Opera. We'll be right back for our ratings. Now, one thing that we didn't bring up at all, Pete, just real quick, this film, the only existing version, well, I shouldn't say the only existing version, the only version that we have access to right now is the 1930. They lost the 1925 version. They re-released it in 1930 with a score that had synchronized sound effects. But that audio, they have not released. They found it, but they haven't released it. The only way we can watch the movie right now is a 1980s new score by, I think, Carl Davis, with, again, synchronized sound effects and such. And I think that he took the theme, the Melisande theme, and integrated it into his score. But otherwise, it's not. It's like we're seeing this 1980s score of the picture, which is really strange because they found the score, but they've just not released it for some strange reason. Yeah.
Yeah.
Little thing to know.
Attention, film lovers! A mighty call has gone out across this great land of ours, and it calls you to action. The Next Reel family of film podcasts is assembling a brave and noble company. Listeners who believe in the power of cinema, the joy of conversation, and the solemn duty of supporting the shows they love. And now is the hour to step forward. For only $5 a month, or $55 a year, you can join the proud ranks of our membership forces. As a valued supporter, you'll march at the front of the column with ad-free episodes, early releases, members-only bonus shows, live streams, and access to our bustling community on Discord, where spirits are high and camaraderie is strong. Let no one say you stood idle when the cause needed you. Your contribution keeps our microphone steady, our episodes flowing, and our cinematic mission alive for listeners everywhere. So don your virtual uniform, straighten your cap, and answer the call. Visit truestory.fm/join and enlist today. The Next Reel family. For cinema. For conversation. For us all! Letterboxd. Andy. Letterboxd.com/the next reel. That's where you can find all of our reviews and our hearts and our stars. What are you going to do for the big parade?
I again really liked this film. It worked well for me. I'm going to say 4 stars and a heart.
Okay. Okay. I mean, I definitely am giving it a heart. The question was 3 or 4 stars. I think I'm going to give it 4 stars because...
Wow, okay.
Yeah. I mean, that last hour is why you show up for this movie.
It's,
for me.
It's impeccable.
And it's incredible. So...
Yeah. I also was like... There's a moment when they realize that they're launching gas and they have to put on their masks. And
where are those
Gilbert,
gas masks?
Well, they're under their helmets, but the way that John Gilbert, like, he puts his on and it looks like his goggles like folded inward.
Yeah.
And they keep filming it that way. I'm like, man, that must have been a really uncomfortable way to have to wear that mask for as long as he did, because it just doesn't look like it's on his face. Right?
I mean, that's easily just what he endured between that and the leg binding. That's worth a star alone.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Great film. Well, that averages out to 4 stars and a heart, which you can find on our account at Letterboxd at The Next Reel. You can find me there at Soda Creek Film, and you can find Pete there at Pete Wright. So what did you think about The Big Parade? We would love to hear your thoughts. Hop into the Show Talk channel over in our Discord community, where we will be talking about the movie this week.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Letterboxd, give it, Andrew.
As Letterboxd always doeth.
Yes, it does. Now, I will say mine, I know already that you went low, even though I don't know what it is, but I assume because you went low, it's probably got some humor to it.
There's a hint of humor, yes.
I have no humor at all. So can I set the table with some non-humor?
Please. Yes, let's do that.
This is from our friend Comrade Yui, who I believe we have done reviews from Comrade Yui before. The image of a long line of men marching mechanically to their deaths, slowly being picked off by machine gun fire, organized in such a way that they can and must overwhelm the enemy because there's simply too many of them for the German enemy to kill. Vidor really understands the radical absurdity of 20th century warfare. The naturalist beauty here isn't overly thought out, isn't contrived. It simply communicates the basic humanity of an inhumane situation. Orders? Who the hell is fighting this war? Men or orders? 5 stars and a heart. Very well said.
Yeah, very well. Yes, indeed. You know, it's interesting. That reminded me, I had never heard of the piece that Rudyard Kipling wrote called Boots until seeing the latest 28 years later.
Mm-hmm.
And it's where Danny Boyle integrated that recording into the film and in the trailer. And it just really struck me because it's just like, I've marched 6 weeks in El Incertify. It is not fire, Devil's Dark or anything, but boots, moving up and down again. It's like this constant thing of just this forced thing that these boots just have to keep going and you can't get out of it. And it's just like this never ending. And I think that spoke to that a lot, the horrors of just the reality that you have to deal with this. So,
and now you bring the jokes.
I was a joke or just like, woof. I got a 1.5 by Avery Clark. The Big Parade, my first silent film.
Oh,
I don't know if this bodes well for Avery, let's just say. I had to watch this for class. It was better than I expected, but it dragged on for way too long. The guy who kept chewing tobacco was actually so gross. I was so happy when he died.
Oh, Slim!
I was like, oh, ouch. But yeah, I think through today's eyes, Slim is a little much to take.
Yeah.
It's
Slim
so
is a little
gross.
much.
It was just disgusting.
Wow.
Yeah. So there you go.
Well, thanks, Letterboxd.